I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and a warm welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In all of the true crime cases, is this the first we've come across that involves an animal tranquilizer gun and a cocktail of drugs? Because that is what the coroner in this case says that he found in Suzanne Morphew's tissues. I must say, I don't know about you, but I'm really surprised that they were able to get so much detail, even though her remains were out there for so long. Must have been a lot of chemicals in the system to begin with. I think you'll agree with me that we're dealing with a very atypical murder weapon here, not one many killers would know about. Now, according to the Denver Post, the CBI's announcement of the manner of Suzanne Morphew's death said the completed autopsy report had revealed she died by homicide by undetermined means in the setting of butyrophenol, azapirone, and medetomidine intoxication. Probably mispronouncing that, but it's a interesting use of language, basically saying homicide by undetermined means in the setting. So they're basically saying it's associated with tranquilizer chemicals, and it certainly seems to be within the scenario of a tranquilizer dart being used. That doesn't seem to be in dispute. Now we do know that Barry admitted to not only owning tranquilizer dart guns, but using them as well. According to the Denver Post, Barry Morphew told investigators he used the dart gun to tranquilize deer so that he could harvest their antlers. And the important part there is when he said he was using it. I think he said something like it was in April that he'd used them last. In other words, he'd used them quite recent, prior to Suzanne's disappearance. On Monday, which is today, Iris Ayton, Barry's defense attorney, said that the dart gun was broken and locked in a gun cabinet when investigators found it. Oh, so it must have been another killer with a preference for tranquilizer dart guns that killed Suzanne Morphew. And because his gun was broken, he couldn't have used it. Oh, okay. So listen, the fact that Barry had tranquilizer-type weapons in his home, and bear in mind, the cap of one of them was found in the dryer, and also that the victim was killed using one, I think that's going to be a tough hurdle for his defense to leap over. Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, I actually visited Moffat. I've been covering this case at length, and to be frank, this is not a huge surprise to us. I think many of us suspected that a tranquilizer gun was somehow used in the execution of this case, in the execution of this crime. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, in terms of these drugs, let's try and pronounce them correctly. Butyrophenol, azapirone, and medetomidine. Medetomidine might be something like that. Anyway, what are these chemicals? What are they associated with? Well, apparently all three drugs are used in veterinary medicine to have human applications as well. They can be combined into what's known as the BAM formulation, which is used to tranquilize wildlife. So when you combine all three of these drugs, they can be used to effectively tranquilize wildlife. And so this suggests that Suzanne was hunted, darted, slowly sedated, and probably looked her killer in the eye as paralysis set in and her killer stood gloating over her. Butorphanol is a synthetic opioid nasal spray used to manage severe pain, including for the treatment of migraines, and that is according to the National Institute of Health. It can also be used to sedate dogs. Azaparone is a tranquilizer, according to the Denver Post. It's used in veterinary medicine and used by wildlife resource officers to sedate large animals, and often on pigs. So these aren't the sort of formulations you're going to get at your local pharmacy. They're quite specific. Then medetomidine, also used by veterinarians to sedate dogs and cats, according to the National Institutes of Health. To me, the most important thing is when combined, it's a classic formulation used to tranquilize wildlife. Now, during a search of the Morphews home after Suzanne's 2020 disappearance, this case is already 4 years old, law enforcement officials reported finding a dart gun. This is according to reporting from the Denver Post. They found a dart gun, they found empty darts, they found a needle used to inject tranquilizer chemicals into the darts, and that's according to previous court testimony. And as I said, they also found a cap used to cover the injecting needle in the clothes dryer at the house, along with bed sheets and clothes. And what that seems to indicate is that a dart was used very recently. Now, wasn't there someone who claimed at one point that he found Barry Morphew's gun in a field outside Moffat? What does the autopsy say about that? Well, possibly nothing. Chaffee County Coroner Jeff Graff has not released the autopsy report, but Suzanne Morphew's bicycling clothes were found with her body, Aiton said. That's quite interesting. A bullet also was found near her remains. She said, now, does that suggest that she was on her bicycle when someone shot her with a tranquilizer dart? Aiton went on to say, I guess this is in an emailed statement to the media, I'm assuming, she wrote, quote, DNA left on her clothing by the murderer could bring justice for Suzanne, her family, and the community. The authorities will also not provide the Morphews any information regarding whether they have performed any testing on the bullet that was collected with Suzanne's remains. Now, the interesting thing is the autopsy seems to say nothing about a bullet. It doesn't say death by gunshot wound. It simply says that it's associated with a kind of intoxication using these tranquilizer formulations. And so that's an open question. Is some kind of firearm also part of this homicide? What do you think? I'm not going to take it further than that, but thus far no new charges have been filed against anyone. What do you think? Do you think some charges will be brought at some point? Do you think they should be brought against some point? And if so, against whom? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.